Thank you so much for joining this session. Welcome, everyone. My name is Josue, as you know, so you can find me on this social media. And all right, so it's time to start. We're very happy to have some, world class guests today. And before we start, I just wanted to make sure that you know what these sessions are about. So, as you know, these sessions are here to inspire students, creators from all over the world. We want to connect these inner minds and processes with the artists, and we also wanted to make sure that like you get a really hardcore inspiration out of their work. Every month, we're going to start talking with a creator into our industry. You can also see us live on our YouTube and Twitch channels. And thank you so much for your contribution. And can you let us know in the chat where you guys coming from, so we can like say hi to the people who are here. With no introduction, I'm going to welcome Joanie and Juliette. Thank you so
Hello.
much, guys.
Of
Hey,
course.
how are you? Yeah. How are you? Great to
Great.
see you guys. Yeah, it's always. I have some people here that wanted to say hi to you. So there's Emmanuel from Dominican Republic. Whoa, wow. Hola, Emmanuel. Isabel. Hey, Isabel from Toronto. We're just speaking about Toronto, and then we're speaking about you, actually. Vancouver. Okay, Montreal, Madrid. Okay, there's so much.
Ah,
Oh, wow. Okay, so hello, guys. Thank you so much for joining this session today. Last time we saw each other, we were having a mezcal and tacos in Mexico City, right?
uh-huh.
That was a great night. And I just wanted to introduce really quick to our guest here today. I think they don't need no introduction, but I'm just going to like present you really quick. So Joanie Lemercier is a French visual artist and an environmental activist whose work explore human perception through manipulating light in space, working primarily with light projection and computer programming. Lemercier transformed the appearance of everyday objects and forms, blending reality to his imagination. Juliette Bibasse is an independent curator specialized in digital arts. She's a director. She's the artistic director of the studio Joanie Lemercier. Together, they collaborate to create new projects around new imaginaries and desirable features. Man, this is an honor to have you guys. I'm a big admirer of your work, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are around here. It's also an admirer, but as everything starts with where the hell you guys met and how this everything started, it's not just about seeing all this amazing light artwork, but it's also about where you guys start. Like, how do you guys got interested into this industry, and how everything started? That could be like my first question to start this session.
So you start. You
You
start.
start.
No, you start first. So you start with Bristol, and I'll take from. Oh wow, we lost Rosway. So you do the Bristol part, and then I start from the mapping festival.
Okay, so for me, it started when I was a kid. My mom was actually teaching graphic design in a small school in Rennes, in my hometown in France. And so she was teaching the young students to use a software called DPaint on a computer called Amiga. That was around like 1988 or something. So we had a computer at home, which was amazing for me because I was already a nerd and I was already like super excited about softwares and computer and stuff. So I started practicing basically drawing on a screen, on a computer screen when I was like super young, probably like 5-6 years old, and basically I never stopped. So I kept using the computer for my personal practice, and I started doing more and more creative stuff when the early digital cameras arrived and were available. I have this memory of like an art teacher who had a camera when you can put like a floppy disk. You would take one picture and he would take 2 or 3 minutes for the camera to write on the floppy disk. But then you could have like manipulate the images quite easily, and that was when I was like 16 or something. And so basically it started like super early, and I never stopped. So I moved to England when I was 20, and I started doing projections in clubs. I was sort of fluent with the computer at the time. I could, convert like video files, find any software to sort of mix visuals together, which is called VJing. So I started doing VJing in 2005 in Bristol, in England, and I would do this as a hobby. My normal job was graphic design. I was making Flash websites, and I was making a little bit of programming, a little bit of database. I'm not really deep into code, but I was, sort of fluent with like simple JavaScript stuff. So that was my job. And on the weekends, I would bring my projectors in a club and like play alongside a musician or a band or a DJ. And this is how I started in 2005. Every weekend, I would do the gigs for free or for like a few beers and like guest lists for all the parties in Bristol. So that was the coolest thing to do as a hobby. And then I discovered projection mapping around 2007. And I discovered also friends of mine who were doing projection, but not just regular VJing. They were projecting onto objects, onto transparent materials, onto buildings. We founded Anti-VJ, because we were all VJs, but we didn't really like the sort of 3D text rotating on a cube. So we called ourselves like Anti-VJ as a bit of a joke. And this is how it all started. And then I never really stopped doing projection mapping, especially doing projections, but not on a screen, on like everything but a screen. So on water, now we're doing with Juliette projections on trees, on grass, on like everything but like a rectangular projection, because there are so many of those rectangular projections all around us.
And so for me, I did art studies. I grew up in Paris, and I studied there, and I did different things following my art studies. I was mostly an artistic director, more in graphic design. But during my art studies, I was also organizing some exhibitions in my school, and then taking part into different activities. And then I needed to get out of Paris, so I ended up in Canada, in Montreal, and a little bit by accident I ended up working at SAT in Montreal. I'm sure many of you there know about this place that makes a lot of dome projection. And then coming back to France, I ended up in Switzerland actually, and I met with Joanie at Mapping Festival. We knew already from before, because I'm friend from high school with Romain Tardy, who was one of the Anti-VJ. So during after my studies, I would already go to the very, very first Anti-VJ installations, and I was there at the very beginning of all of this without working in that field. And when I met with Joanie, he was actually the one telling me about the job of a producer, of an artist producer. That's something that still doesn't really exist in France or in Belgium, in most of Europe. But Joanie was very used to it because of how things are in the UK. And how there's, I believe in the UK and also in North America, there is a bigger ecosystem around the artists, and more like maybe professional artists. And I started being Joanie's producer and also other artist producers. So I work with Memo Akten, with Carl McDonald, with also Korean artists, Russian artists. So that was a bit the years where I learned from different practices. And then also a little bit by accident, I became also an independent curator for small events in Brussels, where we've been based since 2017, I think. I had opportunities to organize events in Brussels. And then I became the international curator for Stripe Festival. That's a very geeky art, music and technology festival in the Netherlands. And since then, I really developed my practice as a curator. Also, to push my vision of a certain part of what's happening in the digital art scene and maybe less of another part of what's happening there. And recently, my activities in the studio working with Joanie really started to unfold. And that's when I became more of an artistic director and not only a producer. Now we discuss the projects and have tried to have a vision together of where we want to go. And that also happened a lot from this crisis that happened a bit by accident in Joanie's life, to have a bit of an environmental crisis on a personal level at first. So on a personal level, it was very separated with what we would do as a studio. And then it became like so many things in life, you know, you try to separate your life in blocks. And when you're really passionate about what you do, at some point things merge. And we decided that we had to merge what we felt was not going in the right direction in the world with what we were doing as professionals. So it's been, I would say, since 2019 that we actively decided to go into a direction in making installations that were also connected to the climate, environmental, and social crisis that we are all facing nowadays.
This is something that I wanted to also point at, because I mean, you guys have a superpower, right? And you know, a lot of people who are joining this session, they do have superpowers, you know, like to do beautiful things. And your case is rare. In what I'm saying rare is like there is such little amount of people that are making this type of, you know, like concern and statement with their work, you know, like making audiovisual stuff. It's something that you get nowadays, you get kind of like involved, because it's so powerful, you know, the things that you can get with visual stuff. But what you guys are doing is truly inspiring, because it's inspiring people to take action into things. And I saw that in when I went to see your exhibition here in Mexico City, which, by the way, you know, it was one of the most visited exhibitions in years in Mexico City. It was crowded all weekends. You know, it was all over the newspapers in Mexico City. It was a huge, complete success. But it has a powerful messages there. And this is something that I don't know, like you know, that something happening you guys in your life, and you're taking this thing. Do you want to, you know, share this with the audience? You know, how you make this kind of like change for your work, and how you've been able to, you know, like merge those kind of like superpower of making audiovisual stuff that was like amazing, and curating, you know, like artistic exhibition, and then make an exhibition that actually have an extended.
It's very difficult. It doesn't happen overnight, but basically the thing is, so you're starting to be really concerned about a situation, and I believe you have two choices. Either you stop what you do and you turn into, like, we all have so many friends who stopped doing the what's called the stupid jobs, and managed to find a meaning to their lives by making bread or doing ceramics or growing tomatoes. And maybe once a week I still think I have to stop everything and grow tomatoes. Or you have the other choice, that is use your experience and your skills and what you've learned and made better over years, and use this to make a change. And I don't believe in it every other day. Like, it's really difficult. Some days I'm like, okay, the situation is so terrible, how art is gonna make any difference. And some other days, like the example you gave, like we've shown to so many people, like thousands and thousands of people worldwide, this the biggest coal mine in Germany, 1 hour and a half from where we work and live. And there's also so many problems in Mexico and in Peru and in China, but showing this specific mine and giving an interest to it shows that we are all connected in this problem. And you talk about taking action, and that's one of the slogan of Extinction Rebellion. And Joanie will talk more about that because he was in full action last week. And for him, it's the only way that it doesn't fall into total despair is by taking action. And we decided at some point that our actions will be stronger if we use our skills, our equipment, our network. And then it was possible also thanks to opportunities. Like this exhibition you saw in Mexico happens thanks to the support of Foundation Telefónica in Madrid, and was shown in Mexico and Peru also thanks to Foundation Telefónica. And the foundation was the money maker, but in the foundation, you had one person who's the head of exhibition that believed in us and trusted us. At first, when they came to us, they really wanted a team lab style exhibition. And it was a conversation we had with them to propose an exhibition that was half of the exhibition about these digital landscapes that you could expect from a studio like Team Lab or what we've been doing for many years. And the other half was entirely about the destruction of the environment, activists taking actions. And at the time, we could not believe that they would get on board with that and that they would give this visibility to what we had to say. And then it turned out to be really successful, this exhibition, but also this project that's called Slow Violence. That's an audiovisual project on this coal mine and these activists. It's been shown in 12 places in the past 2 years, including 5 places in Germany. So we did it. Honestly, at the beginning, we thought, okay, if we do a project around that, we're going to lose money, but it's okay. We will fund the project. So we totally self-funded the project at the beginning. And for Joanie, it was all along the creative process, it was almost impossible to believe really that this would become a good audiovisual project. And it did in the end.
Yeah, it's funny. To be honest, all this story happened also a little bit by accident. And then with the help of Juliette, we sort of streamed this into a more sort of creative output. But I can show you in just a few slides, sort of, it's a very visual story. That's why it's so meaningful to me. I work a lot around landscapes. And for some reason, I love especially desertic landscapes. So you see here like a trip we did a couple of years ago. And I'm always sort of interested in this representation of nature, but very sort of dry, geometrical, black and white, cold aesthetics. And this is something I love. To be honest, I'm also very much inspired by I was always inspired by the work of Alvanotto and the sort of very dry, minimal techno. I think a lot of us sort of like this. And so I've been sort of exploring those landscapes, sort of dystopian, end of the world landscapes. This is for the geeks like me. This is 3D rendered using Octane. So the lighting is a lot more sort of realistic. And I've been, pushing this sort of aesthetics of dystopia because I like it so much. Because I loved Mad Max. I loved all those sort of films from the 90s where, everything sort of disappears. And then I discovered by accident this location. This is pure randomness. This image that I like so much, which was made with World Machine. And this picture that I took with a drone, which is, it's a location only an hour and a half from our studio in Brussels. You can see here the location of the largest coal mine of Europe. And this is the place.
Wow.
Very big. It's 8 kilometers by 5, and it's very dark. This is an actual picture from the drone. And this is shocking. When you get to the
Wow.
edge of the line and you see this, in the background, you see 3 power plants where the coal that you see here in the black area in the center, the coal is being taken with directly to those power plants. And this is like the Mordor, the end of the world. So I was really shocked when I first saw this place. And it's almost impossible to believe because this looks like the end of the world, really, like a really horrible dystopian film.
So as a visual artist, you also, of course, you had a personal crisis, but you also had an aesthetic crisis, realizing like a visual crisis as well. Like the feeling of responsibility was on different aspects. It was like the way we use technology, the way with every work we do, we say technology is amazing, you do art with technology, as well as the images we produce. Like for so many years, producing images that have no life, that are like lifeless, and then realizing that the reality is becoming exactly the same as these dry imaginaries. This was not instant switch, but it really forced us to ask ourselves what type of imaginaries we want to propose to the audience. And that's also why now we're moving to what could be completely different art installations, but we try to bring life, to bring nature, to bring water, to bring the light of the sun, also as a way to make those imaginaries as desirable as the Mad Max and dead landscapes have been during growing up. Like Joanie talks very often how he was inspired also by the Hollywood movies and these aesthetics were more or less the only proposal of what the future could be. So as a curator, I'm convinced that it's hard for people to imagine things that they have not seen already. The only people for who it's easier are the artists and the visual artists. They can imagine things that do not exist yet. So that is why I believe artists have a bigger role to play than sometimes they believe they do. Maybe I could your description of what happened. But yeah, did we answer the question?
Of course. Again, thank you so much for this amazing effort that you're making in this practice because it's so rare right nowadays. And one of the intention that we wanted to invite you today is because we want also to share this with others who might want to say something and act and also use their superpowers to put it out there and not just make beautiful things to go ahead and also talk about the problems that we're living, and this is what inspires us the most. And I wanted to ask you something. What would the advice will be to people who are just starting into this career industry? Because as you know, it's kind of like, it's not new, but it's like 10 years ago was not very known that you can do this with computers and with art. What could be your advice that you wish you should know when you started into this scene?
So I guess the advice, the things we learned over the past years, maybe they're not relevant now. So it's difficult to I feel really lucky that I started when projection mapping was very early. So it made our practice a lot easier because we had a lot of inquiries all around the world to do. We traveled a lot. So we were in a very privileged position, but now I wouldn't do the same thing again because, that sort of lifestyle of traveling all the time is not really sustainable. So it's hard to find the right advice. But there's something we learned recently. I'm going to share my screen again real quick. I think it's a work we did together with Juliette. Over a couple of years ago, we sort of looked back at all the projects we did, and we realized that there's a tendency from the festivals and the events to ask for something new every time. So a lot of places, they would say, oh, could you do something like a new project or something completely fresh with this new technology? And I did, and with NTVJ we did. So we would do a different project every week almost, and it was very exciting because we were like 20 years old and we were like full of energy. But what I would do slightly differently now is that instead of doing something new every month, I would probably try to so keep experimenting on a small scale. You can do, a small model of any idea with a tiny projector, with a little paper model. That's very convenient. But then maybe try, once you have a good idea for a project, hold on to it and maybe develop this project, make it better every time it's being shown. And maybe you can also think about scaling up and down the project depending on the location. If you start your project in a small club, maybe you will do like a 2 meter by 2 meter projection on something small. And then a few months later, big festivals want you to do a big stage design. So maybe instead of starting from scratch, you can sort of reuse your code, your idea, your concept, your sketches, and maybe you can make that early prototype better and better and better. And the good element of this is that on an economic perspective, it makes a lot of sense, because that one project that you developed, you're gonna use all this and make it better every time. So you can monetize again the work that you did in the past and the new work that you're gonna add, and the quality is getting better. So yeah, in my career, I think now I've done about 100 different projects, and only 15 of them were shown several times. And now it's been, 3 years, 4 years, a few years together, that we have projects that are like a package, and we can ship the project anywhere in the world without even going. So we send instructions, and this is a good example of something that happened a few months ago, where on the same weekend, we are really proud of this because it was a lot of work, also production work from Juliette and a lot of discussions. But on the same day, we had 4 projects running in 4 different countries, I think, or two in different places in Spain. And so it's very good on every level to build up from existing projects.
I want to add a little bit. I'm also a tutor in 2 schools in Paris, and I just want to add something to what you said about using what you have that's already out there. I'm always amazed by how often students are going to put all their energy at reinventing the wheel, and sometimes spending 3 months just on the design of a stand where you can use a keyboard stand or a mic stand or whatever stand. And it's the same what Joanie said about software, also applies to hardware and to anything that's available. Then another big tip that comes from Joanie's practice is to document and to share. Like, so often students are telling me, I don't want to put things out there because people are going to copy me. And I'm like, okay, if you're being copied, then your idea is really good, but I really doubt that your student project once on Vimeo or YouTube will be copied by all the big names out there. So I know that for Joanie, it's always been a drive to prototype something, to make a little video or some pictures and share on Twitter, share on Instagram. And that's also how you build your community, how you get feedback, and how someone from software will say like, oh, I have a patch that could help you make this smoother, or I don't know. And then the third tip would be to reach out to people you admire. It's not always that they will have the time to get back to you, but like in our case, we really, really try to get back to every single email. If there's one unanswered email, I apologize, and people should email again. Maybe it happened at the wrong time. But you would be surprised nowadays how accessible people can be on Instagram, on their mail, and it includes also programmers of big festivals. Like as a curator myself, I'm always looking for the new upcoming unknown artists that maybe I'm gonna be the one to discover, you know. So believe me, if you send the right email, and I have a 1-hour workshop that's all around like what you should say in this email, how advanced your prototype should be. But even the director of Mutec is likely to look at it. Like you would be surprised. Of course, if you send a 3 pages long email, he won't answer and he might not read it. But at the beginning of his career, Joanie mostly sent emails, and you kept telling me that for a long time. Like you were sending hundreds of emails.
That's where I ended up playing alongside Flying Lotus or a lot of techno DJs that I loved at the time, like Laurent Garnier or Jeff Mills. So it was just by poking them and saying, "Oh, can I make visuals for you because you will be in Bristol next weekend?" And every 10 emails, maybe someone replies, and then you end up playing with. Moderat was one of my really big, an amazing gig I did. And I was like 22 years old. I was on stage with my heroes, and that was like a really, really big kick of adrenaline and excitement. And then you feel like everything is possible. So those connections, I think, can be very meaningful. And then you end up having friendships with those musicians, and then you sort of build up your own bubble around creativity and art and music, etc. And that's very structuring in the way we see the world. It's also the community of friends, artists, creative people, and it's not so difficult to connect, with everyone.
It's funny because like I coach in the HQ, and a lot of my students, they also ask me these type of questions about, hey, I'm new in this industry, but I'm making all this examples and programming stuff. But all of the things that you guys have said, it makes total sense in the industry that we are. Being closer to community, also poke people that you admire, and as well, if there could be a moment where you do a lot of experimentation, but focusing in one theme, that's something big for your development as a student, as a career. So if you guys are hearing this and you don't know what to do with your things, try to also like concentrate to one single stuff that you want to experiment, create, and you'll be surprised to drive this. So I'm going to take one single minute, 2 minutes, just to speak a little bit more about the HQ, which is the school where I'm representing and where the reason that we're here. So this Interactive Immersive HQ Pro is the only school for immersive designers, creative technologies, touch designer artists, developers, and we have over 60 full touch designer and creative technology video courses. We put some new stuff now, which is really awesome. We have a private group with coaches and peers, experts, and Elbers and Matthew Ragan also are answering us all these questions. We also have these live accelerator sessions with workshop with strategies, tools, tricks, where can help you out. And we have right now a 7-day free trial thing that you can try. And now we do this brief stuff. I wanted to ask you guys something more about who you guys admire and who would you like to work next. I mean, you guys know that you've been you told me that you've been poking doors, and what would you like to do next with and who are those guys that you admire, and who are those guys you would like to do like a collaboration or something?
I go first.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really sorry. It's going to be names that do not ring a bell to any of you, because the people I would like to collaborate with today are mostly French writers or philosophers or sociologists that are mostly interested in how we can reinvent our relationship with the livings and the environment. So those are the people I read. I read their books. We listen to their podcasts, and yeah, maybe the closest one that you'd be familiar with would be someone like Donna Haraway, who quotes very often those French writers. But yeah, it's what I feel, because that's the thing about collaboration. Because there was a question about that in the chat. And I believe you may have a drive to collaborate with someone when this person brings something that you feel is missing to what you can bring, and that's when you meet and make something very special. And I still feel that what's missing in digital art in general and in what we do is a very strong storytelling, the narratives. And I wish there were more bridges with the people that are very talented in doing that. But right now it doesn't really exist. Like, there's not really events like the ones that made art, music, and technology come together. I would dream of an event that's around, like, I don't know, poetry and technology, or to name something that seems like not so crazy, or like literature, art, and technology, things like that. That are the things that would really excite me in the future. And another very inspiring person for us is a very famous landscape designer who's French, and he's made a revolution from the 90s. It's called Gilles Clément, and he brought a lot of awareness into considering the parts of nature that are not man managed. So he created worldwide huge public parks that have wild prairies, for example. And for us, collaborating with someone like that, who was a big inspiration into one of our recent projects, would be so we were lucky to meet him recently, and we hope this will happen soon. Joanie, do you have other people in mind?
Yeah, the question of collaboration and inspiration is complex, a lot more than I thought. I had like, yeah, I could probably do like an hour long sort of. I really loved doing like improvised VJ sets for musicians, because they come on stage, they do their thing, and then you try to support the show with the best possible visuals, and you sort of play alongside each other. But it's really spontaneous, and it's really fun. And once the gig is over, it's over, and it's really fun. So that's why I love VJing so much. Then I had this sort of imaginary idea that collaboration with very big names, it was a thing for me, like famous people. now I'm a bit different, but I was like, wow, I'd love to work with him or her, and we did like a couple of amazing sort of collaborations or meetups. We did this crazy project with Juliette with Jay-Z in New York. So it was, you can't go much bigger than that. And we did another, like a few like super exciting names. But then actually it wasn't as spontaneous and fun as the VJ sets, because there's so much pressure. There's so much, stuff around those big names that actually it's not the best and the most exciting spaces. Of course, for fame, it's a thing. But now I don't fantasize so much, working with the super famous. And also Juliette inspired me a lot in like reading about those non-dystopian futures. How do we get away from this, end of the world narratives? And I think as a visual artist making a lot of black and white, dry end of the world visuals, I need now maybe to do another body of work, as we mentioned before, with maybe a bit of life, animals, food, colors, something fun. How do we build a future that is not 2001: Space Odyssey, probably my favorite film? And I don't want the future to be like 2001, because it's really actually different. So now, like Juliette said, we want to work more with writers, philosophers. There's this one sociologist I love from France, is really into politics. And believe me, this is the last thing I was interested in was politics. But now I understood that the world is not in a very good state. And if we want this coal mine to close to reduce our CO2 emissions, we're going to have to do something about it. Especially as a privileged person, I have time and resources to go and document the protest and help activists. So this is why I want to invest my energy and resources to create beautiful stories of a future that would be more desirable than sort of dystopia. So yeah, that's going to be a lot of unknown names and also politicians. Radical left politicians are really inspiring to me for social justice. How do we build a society that is not just based on technology and AI, but maybe also based on more equality on every level, gender equality, social justice, environmental justice. So it's funny because this coal mine thing actually completely blew my mind and changed the way I want to do things. So the next collaborations are going to be probably very unusual. But if you're listening to this,
yes.
I still
a good a good takeaway from this conversation is and this is something that I love. Sometimes you're kind of like a very uh, kind of like in your common play, like saying, like, yeah, I'm gonna work with a musician or with an audiovisual artist, and like collaborating with someone that is not from our industry. It takes you to places, to unknown places, and it makes more interesting stuff. That's what I've been noticing lately. Like all this crazy collaboration between people that doesn't have anything to do. And I was blown away when we were talking in lunch in Mexico, or dinner the other day. Like you were saying, like, yeah, we're talking with these other artists, and though anybody has nothing to do with our industry. Some of them, they're really old. Like in terms of
Right.
age and that kind of stuff. And you know, and the novel thing about this job that we have, in the industry, is that it's very diverse, and it has access to a lot of different people. So I think a good advice for people that are hearing this talk is like, try get away of your comfort zone. Try get away of your just I do audiovisual stuff. Try to go ask someone that doesn't do only audiovisual stuff to see if you can work on a project with them. So I'm gonna pull out some questions out of the people that are asking you some stuff. So there's a question about here, like, how do you measure the impact of your work is having in real social issues? That's a hard one, probably.
Tu veux
Mais
commencer?
ça répond pas à la question, ça.
Tu veux commencer?
Oui. Well, I have two answers. First, as I was saying, thanks to this exhibition that's been touring, but also the audiovisual project itself individually, that has been shown to so many people in places where people might not expect to be told about the biggest coal mine of Europe. We believe we've reached out to people, including even people in, I don't know, in places in France or in Belgium who have no idea that there are still coal mines, active coal mines, very polluting coal mines in Germany. We tend to think this is happening in China or in Latin America, and that it's not really our problem. So I think we reach people and we tell them about the situation, and also telling them about taking action and how everyone can make a difference. And then I think the second entry point can be, and it connects a bit with what you were saying just before, that what we do tends to be very much sometimes disconnected from a wide audience and from people's daily life. And recently, also because of this coal mine, and because of how realizing the way we need fossil fuels in our life and how it became very important, especially for Joanie. And he went into an audit of our consumption at the studio, and then we really lowered all our emissions where it was possible. We started developing a new expertise on the energy aspects, and we've decided that our two latest projects will be very much connected to these questions. And I believe it can be a super interesting and unusual way to reach out to an audience, to tell them like, oh, do you have any idea what's the energy consumption of this installation, or this video projector, or this laser, or this gobo projector? And also working with batteries allowed us to really go deeper on these topics. And it means you can connect to people on the art aspects, but also on the way things are made and our relationship to energy issues. And I think worldwide, in the past couple of months, it's been in everyone's mind. What's my consumption? How bad is my bill going to be at the end of the month? And nevertheless, people have no idea what's taking what energy in their house. And for me, that shows that we've cut people from knowledge, and if you don't have knowledge, you cannot act. And I believe artworks can bring people back to certain knowledge. So that's also a way I think we can approach these topics, these issues, and use art as a communication tool.
But yeah, to answer the question, how do you measure the impact of what we do? You can't. We show the work as much as possible. We try to do this this sort of research that Juliette explained, that we hope is going to inspire others to maybe have a similar approach. So we also cut travel a lot. Before, our economic model was based on like flying every week. Now we did one international flight last year to come to Mexico and to Peru, but that was the only one last year, and we will try to cut. We go everywhere by train now. We're going to Barcelona next week. It's a 8-hour long ride. 13 hours. So that's going to be 26 hours in the train back and forth. But we feel that this is the right thing to do. I've done this really boring thing of like, understanding our consumption. You take your bills and you sort of note and you make those graphs that are boring. But now we have like a better understanding, and we can sort of share that experience with other people. But yeah, this film, Slow Violence, about the coal mine, was actually seen by more than 200,000 people to date. And last week, I was still in the mine in Lutzerat, the last village that was threatened by the coal industry, and it's been destroyed. So the village is gone, and our artwork that was supposed to, bring light on coal mining had zero impact on the preservation of this village. So it's really depressing, because this is the proof that art is not changing the world as much as we would love to. But I think it's going to be on the long run. Yeah, I think over the years we're going to people, and hopefully more and more people will follow that path. And I think it's something on the long run that will have positive impact.
Yeah. So don't get us wrong. We are not saying at any point that making art will change the world. I believe it would be very, very unfair to put that responsibility on the artists. Like when you see those attacks on Twitter, when anyone tries to do something, suddenly this person has to have the answer to everything and make a miracle. We totally reject that. And we're not saying that by doing a work like this one, we are going to make any difference. But what we do is we create a conversation, we ask questions, and this is a starting point, like talking about it and making people aware. As Joanie said, in the long run, it could make a difference. And at least in the meantime, we feel less helpless about what's happening.
So is Israel? Oh, sorry. Just let me just put this one here. Yeah, because this question is related of what you guys were mentioning, and for me, the way I see it is like if you can plant a tree and you have the ability to put the seed and put it there and plant that tree that one day will grow up and will be a big tree. You know, you have that decision at the end. It's your decision, and that tree will be used someday for someone to breathe and to like have an impact. And I think if we have more artists that are planting trees, and you have more people that are planting all these millions of seeds, and we have this superpower that we talk about in this session, you know we could be able to have this power to make changes, right? So I think that's kind of like
So we did planted 400 trees in a private land in Iceland. That was a project we did in 2018. So that's the little hill where we planted them, and for now it's a forest only in our mind and in our imagination. And we took a picture of each single one of them, and I drew every one of them, and we documented the process. And of course, it's not 400 trees somewhere in Iceland that are going to make any difference, but it's also planting the idea in people's mind, and people dreaming about trees and forests rather than desert, empty lands with no life. And yeah, it's a starting point. It's the starting point of things. And we honestly try to sit down and talk about where we want to go, but I believe we don't entirely know where it's going. We're just trying to propose something that is not only white lines, even if, like, next week we are presenting a new project that is very minimal and very dry, and I would be happy to hear Joanie about how we still do projects that are very, very minimal as well. It doesn't mean that we want to bring more diversity, and not saying that there is no more space for minimal aesthetic.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to continue doing this sort of black and white dystopian dry landscape stuff, but also we want to, because I think that's part of my culture, that's part of the aesthetic I love, and I don't want to give up because it's too harsh to just scrap something, and I want to see if the two can meet. And here's another concept that we are developing with Juliette. It's actually, the idea would be to use the light from the sun to do sort of minimal projections, so the best of both worlds. So this is a very simple visual, and it's a mirror with a little masking tape reflecting a beam of sun onto a tree. So it's super bright because it's about 100,000 lumens, so brighter than any projector you can find on the market. And actually you can use electronics, and like a small device may be powered with 5 volts. That's what we've been working on. So we're trying to see if we can do like super bright projections using the sunlight. Also with, we did this residency in an island in Corsica in France, and we are exploring the idea of using sunlight, so very little power, and then we would use mirrors and caustics, and lasers are also super energy efficient. This is a 2-watt laser, and it's very limited in terms of graphics you can project, but you can actually run those projections with a small battery that you charge with solar power during the day. So, we're not sure where we're going, but we would like to keep exploring those aesthetics with the smallest possible footprint. If I can avoid using big and Christie projectors and finding alternatives, I believe that we should put more research or R&D into those sort of low-powered, low-tech technologies, so we could keep doing what we do even if there's no oil anymore tomorrow.
Oh my God, those people are saying like the solar projector is very powerful idea, and reminds me because like in this industry, one of our biggest like enemies is the sun. Like you always want this dark room and control with light, and this idea of using the light out there is driving a new power to people to use what we also have in nature. So we run out of time. I wish we could have more hours into this conversation. Uh, Thank you so much, guys, for being here today. It's been, absolutely inspiring the thing that you do. So many great inspiration talk points here today, and thank you for the audience here. From different places, from India, from
Yeah, we want to say hello to all the people we know, like Francis, Patricio, and all the people
Greg.
we don't know yet.
Right.
And Greg. So it was nice to have a couple of friends, and Julien is watching as well.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, looking forward to take action and together we are stronger. It's kind of a silly slogan, but it's very true when you want to make a difference. So, and again, you can start by just thinking about it when maybe you did not think about it before, and have conversations and yeah, talk about it is the beginning of changing things.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
for having us. See you soon.